So I want to talk about some myths. Most people know that we're in a drought. Most people in the Colorado River Basin have seen enough newspaper articles and websites and blogs, and just in normal conversation, people know there's a drought. But most people don't have a good understanding of the complexity, the interwoven nature of the water rights, the complexity of the storage system, the entitlements of the state, the relationship with the Indian tribes and with the country of Mexico. Most people also don't know about the huge efforts that are already being made to try to deal with this overallocated system. And that, unfortunately, that lack of knowledge generates some myths, some sound bites that people start believing in. And I want to talk about some of those today because it's dangerous if the conventional wisdom is at odds with reality. So the first myth is that there's a silver bullet solution. You know, it would be great if we could take a single, very easy step to eliminate this gap between supply and demand. But unfortunately, that simple, easy solution doesn't exist, or we would have done it already. Our response has to involve multiple sectors of the economy. It has to involve multiple geographic areas, and it has to involve multiple types of use so that no one sector of the economy bears a disproportionate burden, disproportionate share of the load. We're all in this together, and I will come back to that theme. Myth number 2. Cities just need to stop wasting water. And of course, the iconic picture is the Bellagio and its fountains. But you can substitute other sound bites for that. It could be golf courses in Phoenix. It could be swimming pools in LA. It could be bluegrass lawns in Denver. But the myth is, if we just stop having fountains in Las Vegas, we would solve this whole problem. And those of you who live here have heard that, I'm sure, more than you care to. In fact, cities in the Southwest are models of water efficiency and water conservation, and their programs are emulated all over the country and all over the world. And the projected shortfall between supply and demand in the Colorado River Basin dwarfs any estimate of the savings that can be achieved from municipal water conservation. So cities can and should do more, but municipal conservation is just one piece of the puzzle. It's not the entire fix. Myth number 3. Water is too valuable to use on farms. We just ought to take the water from the farms, bring it to the cities where it can supply the houses. So between 75 and 85% of the water in the Colorado River Basin is used for agriculture, depending on what you count. But we'd be very unwise to assume that we can address shortages solely by removing irrigation water from farms. Some of the farmland in this basin is the most productive and most lucrative farmland in the world, and it supplies not only our country, but it supplies produce all over the world. If we retire too much farmland, it will hurt our economy in the Southwest, it will impact our food security, and it will affect and fundamentally change our quality of life. So we need to talk about further improvements to agricultural efficiency. We need to talk about judicious switching to less water-thirsty crops. We need to advance our science so we can grow more with less water. And finally, there are some areas and some crops where a market-based assessment of the use of water would suggest that there are higher and better uses. But we need to be very careful about that, not to destabilize rural economies that are the foundation of this basin. Myth number 4. The states can make this shortage go away, but we know that the 7 Colorado River Basin states are the first responders to addressing any drought and any shortage problem, but they can't do it alone. The Department of the Interior has to be involved. All those reservoirs that I talked about, those are Department of the Interior assets owned and operated by the Bureau of Reclamation. There are 29 Indian tribes in this basin with significant and senior water rights, and they have to be involved. Our partner in Mexico is joined with us by treaty, by a shared culture, and by a shared concern about the future of the Colorado River Basin and the potential for revitalizing the delta of the river at the Sea of Cortez. So this is another version of we're all in this together. We have among the states a very carefully crafted set of agreements that govern their water relationships. The lower basin states have agreed in 2007, Nevada and Arizona, to reduce their draw during times of shortage, but it's not enough. And we know we need to go further. If one state, though, insists on its legal rights and insists on its legal position and refuses to compromise, the other states don't have any incentive to do it, and we can manage our reservoirs right down to the mud. So we need to recognize and we need to support our politicians who recognize that compromise is the only way that we're going to get ourselves out of this drought. There are sound bites like the myths that are easy for politicians and for political races. We need not to support those. We need to make sure that our elected officials understand the complexities and are willing to deal with those complexities. And finally, when times are tough, we'll just sacrifice the environment, sacrifice in-stream flows. I think this group knows better than anyone that environmental and recreation flows aren't just nice things to have. They're essential engines for this southwestern economy. There have been recent studies and analyses and some of reports that have been commissioned by Protect the Flows that show that the recreation and tourism economy is an essential driver in the Southwest, pumping millions of dollars into this economy every year. Liz mentioned that as well. Business interests up and down the river, emblematic of the group here, are increasingly and appropriately vocal about their stake in healthy flows. So maintaining beautiful waterways that support tourism, that support recreation, that support those ecosystems that are in the river and adjacent to the river, those are necessary components of any credible solution. So my point here is that myths can be dangerous. They allow us to slip into complacency because we think there are simple solutions out there. They don't provide the incentives that we need for practical, sustainable solutions. The key, I believe, is education. That's part of what this group is about. And as leaders in the community, you can educate about the complexity, you can educate about the potential solutions, and you can support elected officials that also recognize those problems.